And is anybody in areas that were affected by the hurricanes?
They're definitely being affected, but not much yet. I think
Yeah.
over the next 2 days, it's going to be pretty stormy and stuff here. It's the first time I've ever, I mean, I'm in Arkansas. We're like 600 miles from the coast. And this is the first time that I have seen a tropical storm warning for Arkansas. Oh, okay. Well then, I guess that's what we're doing.
Yeah, like a tornado. I could see that. That's probably
Yeah.
a thing you deal with, right? That's how it is
Yeah.
here in the Midwest. But
Yeah, tornadoes are very common. I mean, we have those multiple times a year, and now it's getting to the point where we have like multiple tornado seasons, as opposed to just the one. We'll have one in like the first part of the year, and then the another in the second part. But yeah, so this tropical storm may actually produce some more tornadoes. So yay!
I feel like we had a tornado warning like last December in Ohio. It was either December or February. It's a winter month, and that was just bizarro world. Like, that's not tornado season.
Yeah, that's how it's been starting to happen, because usually it's like spring weather is when you get nasty stuff. Like, remember, I think it was maybe 1999 or 95, somewhere around there. We had it was the March 1st tornadoes, and it was bad. We had like, I think 5 or 10 tornadoes hit all in one night. Yeah, so it was all just like right around the Little Rock area. It was pretty rough. There was a lot of cleanup and stuff as a result of that. But yeah, so springtime is typically pretty nasty. But now we're starting to get them in the like winter time as well, which is new and exciting in terrible ways.
Yes. And then California had fire tornadoes a few weeks ago. I saw, like, what is going on?
This whole year is amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know if anybody's a D&D fan, but I thought it was funny. I saw a tweet that was like, out of all the years to roll a natural one, it had to be the year 2020.
Yeah.
Let's see if anybody else is going to join. Nope, we have a few people on Twitch as well, so that's good. I saw we had actually a lot of people on Twitch yesterday for the triage stream. So we will talk about that a little bit more in a minute.
Tuesday, not Wednesday, Tuesday. Yeah.
Days. Days are either weekday or weekend right now.
Totally.
Whichever yesterday it was.
Yeah.
Whatever yesterday. Totally.
Which screen
Yeah.
did I sit in front of? That's all that matters.
Right. Twitch Triage Tuesday. That's the only way I know.
Yeah.
It's just not with Tyler anymore. Too bad.
Did I sit down at my desk? It's a weekday. Did I not sit at my desk? It's probably a weekend. That's how time works now. Tyler's in the Twitch chat, and he said, yeah, the triage stream was popular if only people got that excited for pop.
Or tests.
People get excited about test stuff we get through and merged more quickly.
Yeah. I've actually been having some good fun, I think, on our test clinics.
Somebody asked if POP stands for problem of other people. Oh. All right, well, on that note, welcome to the Open Hour. For those who don't know or haven't been here before, I'm Cassandra Ferris. I'm our community manager here at SaltStack. What that means is I do a lot of helping the community and the Salt Open team contribute more effectively. I focus a lot on communication, on making sure people can find the information they need, and making sure people know ways to contribute to our project. So some announcements, housekeeping, we were just talking about this, but the triage We now have a Twitch stream for triage as well as for testing and for R&D. We had several people join, and appreciated some feedback we got that people said that they'd like to see kind of behind the scenes how it is that we work, and also that it helped them understand why things sometimes move slower than we might like. So join us for that on Tuesdays. All of those events are on the SALT community events calendar, so you can join us there. So this week, the core team focus has been on just kind of continued work on tech debt, some zero MQ work, and then some discussion around some potential steps. From a community standpoint, the deliverables have been work on the new contributor greeting, some orientation tools, planning the docs jam, and then some website migration as well. We are still planning to switch to PyTest, and that blog post was posted on the community website for anybody who missed it. I'll put a link in the chat so you can check that out and find out why we're making that switch and how it will benefit us. And then a quick update. So on the open hours, I know I posted this in Slack yesterday, but on the open hour YouTube videos and notes, we got a comment on YouTube. Somebody had requested that we add timestamps or something to make it easier to find specific topics within the YouTube video. Turns out that's super easy to do. And so starting with the August 20th open hour video, when you navigate to the video, you'll see a description of what the open hour is, the day's agenda, links to the time that we start discussing each agenda item, and then as well a link to the open hour notes on the wiki. On the wiki, we now have a link to the video, and I also have the time breakdowns there. So if people want to cross-reference or look at things a little bit deeper, that should make it easier for you to find the information that you would like. Any of those sorts of changes, stuff like that makes it easier to find information, please let me know. And if things are doable, I will take care of them for you. See, small event announcement is not a small event announcement, but we are planning for the documentation jam. That'll be a one-day event on Wednesday, October 7th. I will have the event information live online in the next week or so. The week prior to that, we're going to do a docs jam kind of clinic, give people time to set up and get ready for the docs jam. Are there any other housekeeping items that anybody saw? Oh, and one kind of, since I've been trying to share community events with people, I saw that today is the DevOps Columbia meetup is doing a talk on how remote work can be more inclusive. The person who's speaking is a friend of mine, so I'll be checking that out this evening. But if anybody's interested in Columbia and DevOps meetup, I will drop that link in here as well. And if anybody sees events that are interesting or has events that are interesting to share, please share those. I've been trying to put them in the random channel in Slack as well, just to kind of raise awareness of SALT throughout our community. All right. Next up on the agenda, we have some exciting news in that we are a go for SALT Conference 2020. SaltConf 2020 is going to be a one-day virtual event, October 29th, and we are currently looking for speakers on a variety of different topics. So submissions don't have to be perfect. You can just turn in a proposal for something you would like to talk about. If you need help refining writing abstracts, getting accepted, I'm happy to help with that. I have pretty good experience writing and editing talk proposals. Talk should be about 45 minutes long, and we're looking for all sorts of different topics. So event-driven automation, security vulnerability management, policy audits, software-defined data center systems, multi-scale deployments, multi-cloud orchestration, integrating SaltStack with other tools, which is, I think, one area where our community really should have some good material, container management, tips and tricks, some SaltStack use cases. And so if you are interested in speaking at SaltConf 2020, please go ahead and submit a talk. And then registration info and everything will be live as well. All right, does anybody else have any agenda items, meetups, events, things we'd like to share. Nope. Okay, well, as we get more details for SaltConf 2020 figured out, I'll be sharing those so you'll know timing, how to register, all that good stuff. We just announced it this morning, so this is all not new information, but newly shared information. The next item that we have on the agenda is there was a pull request that deals with cleanup calculation of template SLS TPL context. It's come up a few different times, so we actually wanted to take some time to cover it in the open hour today, and I think Wayne was going to go ahead and cover that.
Yeah, I could go ahead and do that. Let's see, do I have this PR up? Or I'll just click on this link and then I can share my screen. I think, so you might have to enable that. Oh, yeah, you'll have to enable screen sharing.
Do I trust you to share my screen?
I know, right? All right, let's see. So this PR is one that came in, and personally, I'm a fan. I think it makes sense. Basically, I guess the impetus behind this PR is that within templates, we have a whole bunch of variables that are available inside these templates. However, as you can see here, several of the ones that existed have not been documented, and they have not been documented for a while. Talking to people in the just in Slack and things, it seems like this has been some of these values or variables have been recommended just kind of multiple times in the past, but there's some odd behavior with how they had existed, and some basically it just seemed buggy. But because we lacked documentation, there wasn't really anything to compare it to. So within this PR, there are several tests to say, okay, this is what things should look like, as well as some documentation based on just kind of the best understanding that we have. So if you are using any of these variables, we've kind of put out a call, like if you're using these and this PR breaks it for you, your existing usage, then please let us know so we can just understand better how these things have historically been used, because there's been kind of a dearth of information about exactly what people thought. Like I think the original PR just says add this value to the templates, and so I think that's it. So if we don't hear anything back, then we'll go ahead and proceed with merging this PR. But we've got tests. It's actually now some documentation for it. Things are rigorously defined, so it's definitely an improvement, or will be an improvement. We just want to make sure that we're not breaking states for everybody, because that's no good at all. But that's really kind of the reason we've been pushing and trying to communicate and make sure, like, because we don't want to break your states, but the only way we can know is if somebody says, hey, I don't expect things to behave the way that we're making this behave. So if that is you, do please let us know. You can reach out either Slack, IRC, the pull request would be the best place probably for it. But yeah, other than that, yeah, I think it will be, well, it will be very good to have it documented and rigorously define what it is that these values are for and supposed to look like. But I think that's it for that. I don't know if there are any questions. I see Michael's here on the call, so if anybody has any questions, he's the one who's, or other questions. I know you've been the one for the PR and have delved a little bit deeper into the history, I think, as far as what it actually is supposed to be doing. So.
Well, a general question. Sorry, I don't know if this is the right forum for it. It's my first time on this Zoom call. Just wanted to find out: is there any plan to set up something like similar to Ansible Galaxy or Puppet Forge, where we have like a central repository of modules or formulas that we can pull from with ratings? You know, something similar to that.
This is definitely the right place for that type of question.
Yeah.
So.
So I guess a state of the union as it is, we do have this, there is the SALT formulas, both working group and repository. I don't know if Imran is here, but Imran, my II on Slack is the one who has been kind of taking the charge for the formulas working group. So he's been doing a lot with that. And so you can find a lot of formulas. As far as ratings, we don't have those on there, but that is available at least as a repository for formulas. I know that we have had some extremely high-level discussions about you know, a module repository type option, because right now what we have is everything, all the modules basically are in SALT. So you've got modules for apt, modules for yum, modules for chocolatey, and APK, and everything else under the sun. All of those, you know, if it's a module, it's pretty much in SALT, you know, if it's kind of generally useful for people. Excuse me, you can write custom modules. That's absolutely a thing that people do. There's no centralized repository for that. Just as far as historically, the approach was you would kind of write your own custom module and say, oh, I think this seems reasonable and cool for reasonably useful for other people and cool. So let me go ahead and open up a PR and get it into SALT. We have discussed, just from a high level perspective, maybe reversing that process to where we have, like you suggested, you know, a module repository basically, where you can say, I want these 5 modules, right? And I don't care about the other 700 that are available. But we don't have any concrete plans yet on that. That's one of the things that we are kind of experimenting with and looking at. And one of the motivating factors behind the POP programming and the POP project that Tom has created. So there's a lot of, I think, potential there. So if that is something that you're interested in, by all means, come hang out and have some more discussions around the POP project and see what I know Tyler would be very happy to have other people involved in the R&D stuff.
Yeah, something similar to maybe like Ansible Galaxy, where, you know, let's say you want to throw up a LAMP stack, right, or something similar, not even a module, but some sort of like a collection of formulas, and, you know, you can have just contributors add their own readmes and pull requests, and so, you know, plus ratings.
Yeah, formulas is the formulas working group, and the formulas repository is definitely the thing that is closest to what you just described today.
We put a link in the Zoom chat. It's a GitHub repo, SaltStack-formulas. That'll give you quite a bit of the formula stuff. We've talked a lot about modules and what we're going to do. I think it's organically grown into 526 modules that are inside of the SALT repo. And we do need to do something there. And we, like Wayne said, we've only talked high level at this point, but one of the things that's coming up that I think we've announced already today was that we're going to do a docs jam, and something that we'd like to focus on is getting some of those modules really well documented with use cases so we can start to kind of parse those out in some way. And we'd be interested to have, of course, the community involved in that, because we want to know how people are using them that aren't us. You know, we know how we use them, we know what we're doing with them. But we'd love to hear how the community is using those in those use cases, so that that would help us as we start looking at that bigger picture of all those modules and how they could be broken out into a repo, like you're saying, and given some sort of not just navigation, but a rating scale, I think would be interesting, or even just some sort of structure, you know, like this is for apps, this is for not, this is for config, this is other things. So that it'd be really cool to have that. And we are currently thinking about it. Just so far, it's only high level. So great question.
Yep. And Tyler has hopped into chat. So he's our resident R&D expert. If anybody has questions or wants to chat with him, or he wants to talk a little bit more about what you're doing in Twitch.
I think you're muted there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I posted a link in the chat. There's a gitlab.com/saltstack/pop/pop awesome. And this is a collection of all known projects that are built on top of POP. And we've actually talked about, like you mentioned, Ansible Galaxy. And we've talked about, like, as we're making all of these new R&D projects, should there be a central repository where you can just download them all? And what we've talked about in the past, and we can revisit it for sure, is that PyPy already is that, and that we'll keep this POP awesome as kind of an official list of projects that we are aware of and that we know are safe and so on. So if you know of any POP projects, or if you've made it a POP or an item project that we're not aware of, be sure to submit a merge request into the POP awesome. So as far as R&D goes and POP, that's where we stand so far on maintaining a repository of all the projects.
Actually, that leads to a question for me too on that subject is, when it comes to like working groups, do we have something, or if we thought about having one that's related to POP projects, that either would be talking about item or other things, since you got a lot of work going on with the Twitch streams, working with item and item AWS or other cloud projects. You know, I didn't know kind of if there might be potential for a working group in the future around that.
I would certainly think so, because there is definitely a significant increase in interest in all of these projects. Like, we have community members at GoDaddy that are very interested in Tiamat, and we have, and not just them, there's really a high rise in interest in Tiamat and in item AWS, and yeah, really lots of POP projects are seeing a lot of community interest. And I think that we could benefit from having planning sessions and coordinating our community efforts around all of these projects. We've kind of tacked it onto, like, sometimes we've gone to the Mac working group and talked about item Darwin there and item Windows in the Windows working group. But I think that definitely a POP specific working group, we could benefit significantly from that. I think so.
I would agree. Like we talked about last week, when we talked about working groups, there's not, I think the only real restriction to whether or not there should be a working group about something is there interest in having it, and are there at least a few people that want to join, and does somebody want to run it? And if that's a thing that we want to do, let me know. Just basically propose, hey, I want to have a work group about this thing. I'll lead it, or I know this person will lead it. From there, I work to kind of do scheduling and logistics, add the working group to the calendar, and it's underway. Each working group kind of chooses on their own how they track their projects and things, but yeah, we can certainly do that. Just if that's something you definitely want to do, let me know and we'll start making it happen. Oh, another thing about working groups is that they can just only exist for a specific amount of time or to resolve a specific issue or problem. We've seen that happen with some of our working groups where they kind of fulfilled their purpose and now they're on a pause and they may or may not come back in the future. So working groups don't have to be a permanent thing. They're just a nice focused area for people to work together. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Tyler. Anybody else have anything else about POP or any other questions before we move to the next topic? All right, cool. So the next thing is that we have well, I labeled it as an upcoming SEP, but now there actually is a SEP. It is on support checking, modifying the return of state.module.run. Somebody had put this in a feature request, and as the problem, they stated that they were struggling to use the WinService modify command from state module run in a way that would allow for some result-based follow-up actions, and they had to write a custom state, which they think they should not have been necessary. And so they proposed a solution that if state module run offered an interface to allow for checking return values and using them to signal success, change, failure, it could have used WinService info and checked values. Going to post a link to that SEP in the Slack. I know this is brand new, but just kind of wanted to, I don't think, did the person who submitted the SEP, did he join us?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either, which is fine. So this is just, I mean, this just appeared, well, within the past couple of days. It's brand new, but just wanted to let you all know that we do have a new SEP, and we want to make sure that people know that the SEP is out there, that you all have time to review it, communicate about it, discuss it, and work through it before we would actually implement a big change like this. Do you have anything else to add, Sage or Dimitri? I don't see Dimitri on.
No, just want to make sure people are aware that we are still writing SEPs, salt enhancement proposals. We want to see those, and so we're just trying to get the word out there. We'd love to hear commentary on that and see it in those SEPs. I'd love to hear people's ideas, and so just announcing that. That's all.
Yep. And a quick little process note, starting with this SEP, I'm going to be starting to kind of moderate and track the SEPs a little bit more closely. This will be one of the first I've seen beginning to end, so
yeah,
I'll be keeping an eye out there. If you have questions or anything, get in touch. Okay, well, that wraps up all of our planned agenda items. So we have time to just chat if anybody has maybe specific challenges, problems they're running into, things they'd like to discuss. Please feel free to speak up. Okay, so what else is on everybody's mind with regards to SALT? I know the minute I say we're going to wrap this up, somebody's going to say something.
I was gonna say, Michael, is it Lastfitch or Lacefitch for who's on the call with that, who opened that PR on the SLS TPL stuff. That looks super cool. That you're not only putting some fixes in code, but you're also adding documentation within the same PR.
Wow.
That's a pretty big deal for us.
I was told I had to.
We are very thankful.
Yes.
Especially on those ones, since those are the ones that are, I remember Wayne showed me, I think it was like last week or so, the history of the trail, the rabbit hole of people using certain features, but that we, where were they introduced? What do they mean? How do new people who've never seen them before understand what they do? So it's pretty awesome to see that stuff being introduced as part of your PR there. So thank you for that.
No problem. I mean, it also is the cause why it took me 6 months before I even attempted the PR, since I filed the bug, because it seemed daunting to try to touch this without knowing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, well, and I also kind of feel like I should partially apologize, because when I first saw it, I thought, well, this is, something simple and easy. And then I think I asked the question. I was like, can we not just use pathlib to make this look a little bit better? And then the PR grew. But I think it's been good, just because there were a lot of things to it that we just, at least I know I certainly didn't realize when I first looked at it.
It's like 7-year-old code, that wasn't documented.
Yeah. It kind of brings up my favorite quote, and that's write code as if the person maintaining it is a homicidal psychopath that knows where you live.
They're not?
And I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday about it, I think, and it's more often than not, that's a good thing, because the person who's the homicidal psychopath is future you. They were like, yeah, I was looking at this code and I was like, man, this stuff is garbage. And I was looking at it and I was looking at it, and all of a sudden it started looking really familiar. Yeah. That happened to me a few years back. And since then, I try to be very conscientious of future Wayne and be nice to that guy.
And actually, too, on that note, then, are there things we could learn from this with especially because this is kind of a trend in a way to the minion and master configuration files too, and some other pieces of configuration that sometimes a new flag or something is added in, perhaps as part of a PR, but there isn't documentation paired along with it, and it kind of sits there until, like in this case, 2 or 3 years later, where someone kind of goes, oh, it looks like I have to use this feature, but I don't see it documented anywhere, or because it looks like this feature doesn't exist, I'm going to try to introduce it in a PR, even though it's like hidden somewhere. I'm wondering if there's something we could learn from this that perhaps needs to be added as part of, and maybe we're already implementing these changes with our kind of newer awareness to the trends we've seen in the past, to what we could have as part of either the PR template or in the PR process, or if there's even some automation that could be in place that goes, is there a new thing that's been added somewhere that I don't know, that now has introduced some kind of new flag that hey, this isn't documented, or I don't really necessarily trying to kind of brainstorm ideas on how to prevent ourselves from introducing this problem to either ourselves or the project in the future too.
Yeah, Pedro was just looking at something that that we were considering putting in that requires tests on PRs, and I'm sure there's something that we could take and make our own if there's not one out there that's either a GitHub action or some sort of Lambda function that we could say, hey, go check for documentation on this, that it's matching up with files that have changed. And I do think that that's something we should look into, because I think that's it could be a focus of the documentation working group to get that into either the template or some sort of bot or something that we run once in a while, like an action that would give us at least an update and maybe even some tickets in that docs hub repo. And I think that would be nice to do for sort of the backlog of things that we need. But then also going forward, if we could have something that looks for changes that are happening on files, and if that documentation is going to match up, that would be neat. I don't know if that exists today, but maybe we could propose that to the docs working group and see if anybody knows and search for it there, and or here, if people are interested. I think that would be neat to have that and to start putting that in as like going forward, this is something that we want to put in our template or how we merge PRs. I think that'd be a great idea. More automation, the better.
From point of view of like somebody adding to code to this, it seems weird to add code in one place and add documentation in a completely different place. It would be nice to have some sort of integration, some either decorators or doc strings or something, and something that can be pulled out. And I also do recognize that it requires knowing exactly what the kind of things can be added in the first place, but it would be nice to integrate those things. It also makes it easier to add new things, because like what the biggest problem here was for me to figure out where this variable was being added and what it does do. But if it's all in one place, it would be nicer.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the things I was definitely thinking about too, because I think that because usually in a lot of these other functions, there's like an auto doc Sphinx command being run that's pulling out doc strings. But in the case where we have something like variables inside of, like, what are the variables available to the minion conf or master conf files? I can see where they exist in the code, but like you just pointed out, someone would have to not only add it to there in the code, but then they'd have to now go find a separate RST file because there isn't automation in place that's like taking advantage of maybe that code that's in there, and if there's any comments or doc strings associated with it that they would have needed to update. And it would be interesting to see what capabilities there would be, because then however these, I'd have to go look at the code, but however that they're being added, I don't know, there'd have to be some kind of specialized automation in place, because the one problem you're going to run into right now, even with the PR that you're submitting, is what if the functionality of those variables change at all in the future? And now the documentation, because it exists elsewhere, is going to be able to fall out of date whenever any modifications happen to the code, unless someone is always being hyper vigilant or pointed in the right direction to go and edit it, when usually with other Python functions, if someone adds a new option and the doc string, they can add it into that same file, then it would be pulled out. So yeah, I think that is definitely something to take of note.
One of the changes I did in here is to pull out that whole block that defines those variables into a separate function. But it could be taken further, where you have a function to add a single thing, and that function should require a documentation in it. So you're forced to write documentation as you are writing the code. You'll have to figure out how to pull that stuff back out, but it will be a little bit easier. But the documentation is the code. And those kind of approaches are nicer. Again, you have to know exactly what you need to be added, and you have to implement it for every single location. But there's a limited number of things. Like you said, there's parameters for the config files. There are variables that exist in the templates and things like that. And if they separate it out, it becomes easier to figure out where they're being added, what is being added, and document it right there.
And actually, on that note, one thing I've thought about, and I'd like to know if you'd think would be helpful, and others too, is our published documentation does not include, for example, a link to where the module source code existed that these either variables exist in, for example, the PR that you're doing. But also even for execution modules, for example, we'll see someone can go to the documentation for it, but it doesn't say, by the way, this was generated by the doc strings located in this file. And so sometimes people will see an error or a problem, but now they need to kind of go and hunt down where did this originate? And I was thinking that it would be a good idea if we started to, if we made some modifications so that those that get built actually include like a location within the documentation too, so that people can go, how do I know where the minion configuration options actually are being pulled from or exist, so I can go and take a look at them. Or like you said, where these variables are located and where you had to kind of go make modifications, because someone can now go look at that documentation, the RST file, but they won't necessarily know where is this code even exists that references these variables. So would people find that, like, if we had that as like a standard in the future where we wanted to implement something like that to assist people to find stuff easier like that, would people find that more pretty helpful?
I am in favor of anything that helps people find information easier. I think that is a recurring theme of a lot of the questions we get is, how do I find this? This isn't linked together. So I think it's a good idea.
It would be really useful. It took me a while to figure out where that stuff was. So it would be definitely useful. I don't know how useful it will be for general public, but once you're looking for things, so it can be small and in small font somewhere underneath there, but it doesn't have to be super obvious. But if it's there, it will be useful.
And it aligns too with one of the goals of the magnesium release from a community standpoint. So those, there are deliverables from a community standpoint as well as a development standpoint, but one of the goals of this release is just to make documentation better, make it easier for contributors to know where and how to contribute and find the information they need. So that fits right along with that goal.
Yeah, that's a lofty goal to do in any release, but we've narrowed that scope to
Yes.
at least looking at the 5 different contributing guides that we have and making one source of truth, and making it so that if we make an update to that it updates in all those different places, but there is one source. So but we'll continue to look at that sort of overall, because we know that the documentation needs some love. So we've got a working group that's headed up there, and we have 3 tech writers on staff that are working hard to make sure that that stuff is happening and initiating lots of changes on all the products, and they're doing a fantastic job, and I think they're getting worked to death sometimes, so I feel kind of bad for them. But we're making some progress, but it'll be a little slow.
It's one of those things that's probably never truly done because the product changes all the time, so documentation is all the time, but we're working on it, baby steps.
And I'm thinking this will be one of the, because things like this seem like, hey, what are the highest impact potential options to do that can be automated? And I think this is like a perfect use case, similar to like how we were thinking of implementing link check automation to make sure links are actually still working or haven't become outdated. That something like this could be, I don't want to call it an easy win, but something like this could be a widespread win without having to go a ton of heavy manual modification to specific single documents. Yeah, totally. So I'm definitely making note of this as something to bring up probably with the docs working group or to add into the docs hub as a thing to work on.
And of course, if anybody's interested in helping with that documentation or has input, you're welcome to join the documentation work group. We meet twice a month and have a lot going on.
On a slightly different topic, as a first-time contributor, one of the biggest challenges I run into is trying to figure out how to set up my environment. I mean, it seemed much more complicated than felt it needed to be, and this could be on me too, but I couldn't figure out how to run unit tests properly. I had all sorts of trouble with this, and I'm wondering if there's more documentation for that and/or automation for that. In the end, I ended up having to commit things and having it run on the CI server just to get some of the details fixed, to figure out what I needed to do.
Were you using Nox?
I was trying, and I couldn't get it to run on a Mac, and I had it halfway working on the Linux box, a VM, and I mean, it seemed like it should be, and I had to install it manually because the installation did not work how I expected it to. And again, like I said, this may be on me, but not necessarily, but I just wanted to provide that feedback.
Yeah, I mean, if you can share what errors you ran into, my understanding is it's as easy as installing Knox and it should run.
Do you have PyEnv installed? Because I know I've got that on my Mac and I don't have any problems with Knox. So it might be just having a lack of the right versions, and PyEnv makes it easy to get the correct version. So I may have done that. It's just been a while since I've set it up. So it's one of those things, right? You just kind of forget exactly the steps you took.
Yeah, I don't have actually PyEnv. I have pipenv, and I usually just do the envs manually, and which is what I ended up doing here. But I got some conflicts between the requirements, and I had to install the requirements by hand, which I wasn't expecting. And I mean, I get it. This is a big, complicated project, a lot bigger than I'm used to working with. So, but I was kind of hoping that there will be like a make test, and whatever it is, it will do everything in the background, which is what I'm kind of hoping for, and or just a Docker container that will run all of this.
Because that's what Knox should do, and at least the way I currently have it set up, whatever that. Whatever differences there are between my setup and yours, it is one of those things that it just works as long as I'm running the right Knox. I know I've had certain types of invocation for Knox where it's just like it doesn't work the way that I expect it to, but there's the one that I find and it's like, okay, I just use that one consistently. But then it does, it will install virtual env, it'll install the requirements for it and run all the things that it needs to run in that. So, yeah.
But this is definitely the kind of feedback that has been also leading to our review of the contributing documentation, because, like you said, this is a very big project. There are a lot of tests that get run. There are different requirements that people need to set up for like documentation. There are different, I have seen the Knox documentation, but sometimes depending on which guide you're looking at, the Knox commands differ. And we have an extensive documentation around testing too, that could be, like you said, if you're not, it can be a little daunting. And if we have different workstations, Linux, Mac, and Windows. So I think I'd like to definitely, I should probably check in with you, Wayne, outside of this on kind of what Knox stuff that you're running to make sure too that that's the type of stuff we're directing people command-wise and environment-wise to be using in our contributing guide as we start to reduce or compile them together into a more of a universal one, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think this is feedback that we've gotten definitely over and over again, and there's a lot of different ways to set up an environment. It kind of depends on what you're doing, and so there's definitely some confusion, and we need like a choose your own adventure to kind of walk you through it on, is it this or are you running this, and then tell us about your use case. And there's some basic things, and those that run it all the time, I think, do have that knowledge and have it captured somewhere, but finding that is probably a little difficult as a first-time contributor. And so, yeah, I agree with Derek that we're trying to make that contributing guide easier to follow. And then a choose your own adventure of how to install would be, we've gone that route before, and I don't know that it's always exactly right. So it's a work in progress.
Just from, for what it's worth,
Yeah.
like one of the approaches I like is to give some sort of wrapper, like I said, a make file or something like that, something that will do things opinionated single way, and then say, hey, if you know better, do it yourself. You know, this, if you want to install your own Nox and all of this, go for it. But if you don't want to deal with it, just type this command and it will be done for you.
Yes.
Because every project does something slightly differently, and there's so many different ways to do things. It's not one is better than the other. It's, well, maybe it is, but it's just easier to just go with what they're using at that time, unless I really, really want to do my own thing.
Right. I think that it's a I want to drive this car off the lot and I want to be able to fix it myself and change my own oil sometimes, right? Or I don't ever want to do that, and I think we offer a buffet of things there, and it's a little bit, we know that we need to work on that. So we're definitely going to do that.
Yeah, that's really good feedback, because that makes me think of why projects like we shifted over to Black, for example, for Python formatting, right? So that we have some kind of opinionated tool that says this is the way we want to do it, so that people aren't doing it 6 different ways or struggling with the different approaches to something. And I think that's a great idea to have something like built into the make file that could, as long as it would point out if you aren't meeting the requirements properly, but would have like a standard of the Nox commands so that you're not having to figure out which ones you're supposed to run, and probably one that was for docs and one that was for other stuff. It'd be just a good starting place. I think that is a great idea, especially from a new contributor point of view, since that's exactly what you are. So this is great feedback.
All right, does anybody have anything else to add or if they want to bring up? We have a few minutes left. Good conversation. That's really good feedback. Thank you for that. I will, when I go back through and create the open hour notes, I'll make sure that I share that as well so that our documentation work group especially knows what we're looking for. Okay, well, on that note, thanks for joining me, everybody. I will see you all or some of you next week and on Slack. As always, if you have questions, suggestions, anything, reach out to me. If I don't know the answer or I can't help you, I will find somebody who can. So just DM me and reach out, and I will see you all later. Bye.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
Bye.